Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be around the world. Welcome to the Groovy podcast. This time we are live from the DevNexus conference in Atlanta, Georgia. It is, March 8th, I guess. It is International Women's Day. Unfortunately, we don't have any women on the podcast at the moment. We'll have to work on that, I guess.
Absolutely.
But we have several presenters here but talking about Groovy-related topics, including Grails, including Groovy, including Micronaut. In fact, it was the inspired marketing decision, I think, to refer to this track as 2GM.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the 2GM track.
Exactly. So I remember the first 2GX conference was Groovy and Grails, except then the Gradle people were involved, and then, of course, Andres wanted Griffin involved.
Yeah, yeah.
But this 2GM, we don't know what the 2Gs are. We just know what the M is.
I think we've been telling people what those 2Gs mean all over the place. So I think by now, probably by the end of the conference, we may have spread the word on what the 2Gs mean.
Well, in case anybody doesn't recognize the person here, I'm joined by several people, but the first one will be Graeme Rocher. How would you describe your title at this point?
Oh, I don't even know what my title is.
Yeah,
It's just like, Grails and Micronaut guy.
Right, this is the creator of the Grails framework and the Micronaut framework. You're still the head of the Grails framework, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I head up the team on the engineering side for Grails and Micronaut.
You know, Jeff Brown claims he's the head of the Grails framework, so you might want to talk to him about that. Yeah.
We don't care about titles. Seriously.
Oh, okay, all right.
And Jeff is amazing at what he does. He's a key to the team, and he's been working on Grails since like 2007.
You're going to be nice to him. I mean, he blew us off. You know, I mean, we wanted him involved on here, and just because he had to make some flight or something, he decided.
He should have just like bailed on the flight.
I mean, come
on the podcast, right?
Priorities, absolutely. Now, let's see. I went to your first talk, which was on Grails at Micronaut.
Yeah.
And do you want to describe very briefly what that was involving?
Sure. So I'm not sure how many people are aware, but we released a milestone of Grails 4 recently, and it's a significant upgrade in that it updates it to all the kind of latest versions of everything. So, you know, Spring 5.1, I think it is, Spring Boot 2.1, Java 8 baseline, Hibernate 5.4, Java 11 support,
yes,
and so on and so forth. So, and then one of the significant new features is that what we've done is we've made Micronaut the parent application context. So Spring supports these like hierarchical contexts,
right,
where you can look up beans from the parent and so forth. And Micronaut is set up as the parent. So what does that mean in like practical terms? Because that's probably like just doesn't make any sense to anybody generally if I say it like that. What that practically means is you can pretty much use any Micronaut feature in a Grails 4 application. So whether it be the decorative HTTP client or client for Kafka or RabbitMQ, or all those features just kind of work in Grails, which is a big win for Grails developers.
Now, if I understand it correctly, I mean, first of all, this is wonderful because we've been waiting for Java 11 support and the latest versions of Spring and Spring Boot. And it's Spring Boot 2.1 that enabled real Hibernate support for Java 11 as well as Spring support, of course. So This is really nice that that's all going to work now.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that was the big feature from what I understood of Grails 4 was that until we came along, or you came along and said, now we're going to enable all of our memory improvements and our speed improvements and other plugins that come from Micronaut.
No, I don't think we added that as a bolt-on. That was always the plan.
I didn't know it.
We've been we maybe didn't talk about it publicly, but it's been a long time goal to try and improve memory and startup time of Rails applications. And I've spent a good part of the last 10 years of my Rails engineering time trying to figure out how to optimize those characteristics of a Rails application. And Micronaut is actually pretty much a result of that experience in building frameworks and understanding how they work and trying to optimize them. And it's pretty much taken all of my lessons learned over the years and applying them in practical terms to something new. to eliminate many of the problems in traditional frameworks, and that's why in Grails 4, much of the infrastructure part of Grails is we've already migrated a lot of it, but over time, as we do more and more pieces of Grails will be built on Micronaut instead.
So if I understand from a user point of view, if I'm already comfortable with Grails 3, it's not going to feel like a radical change to move to Grails 4.
We're not. So far, the feedback we've had from the people who have tried to upgrade has been good. We're not trying to massively break people's applications. There are changes that you will have to make. Some of those are, as always, beyond our control. There are changes in Spring Boot 2.1 that are breaking because Grails 3 is on Spring Boot 1.5, I think it is.
Which is Spring 4.
Which is another major version. So there's changes at the kind of that level that you have to compensate for. And there's changes in Hibernate, there's changes. These things are beyond our control. So,
the move from Grails 2 to Grails 3 was a big change. It was hard to port a Grails 2 app to Grails 3, really. There was a migration path, but there were a lot of concepts and redesign of the layout and everything based on Gradle and all that. But Grails 3 to Grails 4 looks like it'll be a very pleasant migration path for the user, and they'll get all the benefits and the additional.
That's what we hope, and we've had a longer incubation period because we spent quite a bit of time. We were going to release Grails 4 milestone towards the end of last year, but we actually delayed it because, and one of the reasons we delayed it was because we wanted to port a whole bunch of internal applications and plugins and things and test and the guides, for example. We've spent a lot of time creating the guides, making sure they work, finding issues, refining, fixing bugs, getting things improved, so that as much as possible, it's a pleasant upgrade experience. And we are completely aware of that in the Grails 2 to Grails 3 major version change. That was a big upgrade for users. It was kind of hard to avoid not breaking things because we have to abandon a custom-built build system and move to Gradle.
Which is a good thing, but it was a big change.
Right. So the motivations for those changes were sound because Gradle is cool and I like Gradle as a build tool, and having to maintain a custom build system wasn't fun. And with all the advancements in build systems, we didn't want to be spending our lives building build systems.
Yeah, exactly. When there's a perfectly good one out there, which was not there when Grails was first
created. Gradle didn't exist when we started. We started Grails, so that's why we went for the kind of home built. Well, not entirely home built. It was like Groovy and Builder kind of. Yeah. If you remember, it was like based on
it was based on Gantt
and all that kind of stuff.
They were the last app to leave Gantt. Well, not really, but the last big one to leave. Now, Grails, of course, had the one talk, and then I think Zach Klein's got one on Groovy as well. But really, the hit of the conference, from our point of view, our ecosystem is Micronaut. And Venkat Subramaniam did a talk yesterday, and I'm going to get him on the podcast at some point. Venkat's always in motion,
Yeah.
So Venkat did a talk in the ballroom on Micronaut and filled the room.
Yeah,
which was amazing.
I actually wanted to see his talk, and I was outside the door. I couldn't get in.
Right.
I was like, I'd like to come in. I'm like, but no, it was impossible to get into his talk.
So,
he did a fantastic job in delivering.
Well, I had a similar problem today because you gave a talk today on Micronaut internal, you can call it deep dive.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's going to have a much smaller audience. I shouldn't have any trouble getting in. I get here 2 minutes late, and it's like, okay, well, so much for that.
Yeah.
So again, the room was full. You had people
I've been blown away by the. This is really, I think, the conference where Micronaut is generating incredible amounts of buzz and enthusiasm, and people are really responding well to it, and far beyond our expectations, and people are really excited.
I just have to say congratulations on that. That's wonderful. It must feel great to build one framework and then take what you've learned and build a new system and have it start to take off. It's
an accomplishment for the whole team at OCI who have worked like tirelessly the last like year, more than a year, I think.
Yeah, but you can take credit for them if you want.
No, I kudos. James has been like finding RabbitMQ bugs and and doing not very fun stuff. It's been a great journey, and I think we have something that people are finding really compelling, and a strong message around like startup performance, memory consumption, building more efficient applications, whatever the type. And for me, Micronaut is completely different to Grails. It's like
totally different use case.
They have overlap, but Grails is going to benefit massively from Micronaut because we're trying to build a new foundational library for constructing applications, and that spans all application types, right? It's like with Micronaut you can build CLI apps, you can build Kafka message listeners that are headless without an HTTP server, you can build Lambdas that get deployed to AWS Lambda, you can build Android applications, you can do all sorts of stuff. IoT, Alexa skills, it's the list is infinite of what you can do with Micronaut, and it solves very real problems in framework design and development that are fundamental to the way Java work in a really efficient way. There's going to be it's going to be a revolution in the next few years.
I'm really looking forward to it. I remember you mentioned you could make Android apps with this, and I know Ryan is going to talk about Alexa skills as well, and talked about Google Cloud as well. We'll talk to Ryan shortly, and James, in addition to doing a training class on Micronaut before the conference, right, also just talked about the ACTP client, which I'm very interested in hearing about. So we're going to get to a lot of these things, and I'm really looking forward to seeing them all showing up. It's an exciting time when you're at the beginning of an ecosystem and it all starts
it's going to be really interesting to see it pick up. And also it's been really great to see the community grow around it as well, because I think we've had like some significant contributions from the community already. Things like in the latest version of Micronaut, we have support for API versioning, which was a community contribution. Support for FreeMarker, which was a community contribution.
FreeMarker. So you have a front end.
FreeMarker views, basically. It's the template to the views module. We've had so many user contributions. A lot of the micrometer support was written by community. Some folks in Google are getting involved and sending us pull requests for GCP support. So
very good.
It's really like the community are really embracing it, and folks from all over are sending us contributions, and that's really great to see.
I'm sure we'll be talking about that for quite some time. The documentation also already looks pretty good.
Yeah, we have work to do there. We want to make the documentation multilingual with like Groovy and Java and Kotlin support. Which actually, speaking of which, we just received another massive PR for some of that work from the community. So we're really pleased with that.
For the Kotlin implementation?
For the multi-language documentation.
For the multi-language documentation.
So,
it's because I was going to say Jen Strader always has an over-under on the first mention of Kotlin on the Groovy podcast. And, whatever that time was, that was, we have to put Jen.
Yeah, we're I think, but we can't go a Groovy podcast without mentioning Kotlin.
I suppose,
Kotlin Ken, isn't that your name now?
God, here we go.
Isn't that your name?
Moving on.
Moving on.
I did notice one other thing I wanted to mention, though, that you made a nice contribution to the community through that. What's the name of the site again? It's the
the Friends of Groovy.
Friends of Groovy is part of it's called Open
Collective.
The Collective, right? The Open Collective there, and it's a nice. What did you think of it? What attracted you to that? What made you get involved in that?
I think that Groovy is a phenomenal language, and it's basis for Rails, and we support it in Micronaut, and it's so important with projects like Spock and Gradle and so many things, and it's been tragically underfunded. OCI, I think, is the only company, object computing, that has a Groovy contributor on their payroll.
Paul King.
Paul King.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really tragic when you consider how important Groovy is to so many companies, from like Jenkins pipelines to Gradle builds to all sorts of things, and it seems quite obvious that none of the other Groovy companies are willing to step up. So I think that the Open Collective is a good initiative to try and close the funding gap and try and get Groovy features done quickly through contributions, crowdfunding, and so forth. And in terms of personally, Groovy has been so important to me personally in my career and so forth that I absolutely have no problem becoming a sponsor and making that contribution.
On that site, you can make a one-time contribution or a monthly one.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to throw in $5 a month because that makes me Paul King's boss, right? I mean, I can tell Paul King what to do
Absolutely,
now.
yeah.
Is that the idea?
Texting you messages now.
Yeah, say, hey, I'm funding. I have no idea where the money's going to go. I know I know they say they're going to fund features and changes, but I don't know what the plans are, how they're going to do that. But we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll see how that evolves in the future.
Yeah, I encourage everybody to even if $5 is an amazing contribution, and everybody should chip in a little bit. We spend $5 on a Starbucks. So
sadly, yes,
coffee. So,
on a regular basis.
$5 a month is no big deal for a huge swathes of people. And just think about what Groovy does to you every time you write a Spock test, every time you run a data load, every time you do anything. So
it's been huge for me as well. So so thank you very much. I know you have other meetings you got to get to. I'm really glad you were able
Pleasure
to make some time.
Thanks for your time.
Great.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so we will also have let's see, Brian's got a constraint, right? So yeah, we may both have a constraint. Actually, depends on. But come on up, Brian.
Well, they'll just start talking, and I'll.
Yeah, because you're going to have to transition into doing your talk fairly shortly. But then we'll have James come up as well. So this is Ryan Vanderwerf.
I'm Ryan Vanderwerf.
All right there. You've also got your Micronaut shirt on. Very good.
Of course. Yes.
You're right. Another OCI person. And I mostly see your work through what you do with Alexa and other providers like that. But, I mean, you've got the Alexa skill for the Groovy podcast, right?
Yeah, so as far as I know, it still works. So sometime at one point, you guys changed the naming scheme of the episodes, and it would look that up. But then it just started working again, so I left it alone. So,
all right,
but yeah, so we've been doing the Grails stuff with Alexa for several years now, right? And they had an old Java SDK, and it was really kind of broken in a lot of ways, and I actually had to fork it and then fix a bunch of problems so I could do the Groovy podcast skill. I couldn't do it unless I had forked their JDK because it was pretty bad. And now they've rewritten the whole thing, and there's a V2 API, and it's completely different. So when we added the Micronaut support, it's in the 1.1 milestone release for Alexa. That we're using the version 2 of the API, which is much cleaner.
1.1 milestone of
Micronaut.
Micronaut, okay.
Yes, and so at that point, it works completely differently. But Graeme had helped make a cleaner implementation of what I had started, and you can have annotations for handlers. For Alexa skills, you can put in the code, and everything in the new SDK is all using builders, so it makes more sense. You can just say, I want to build a response to an Alexa request. I can add to the calls to this builder and then build it up, and then it sends it off, instead of shove a bunch of things in these objects and then hope they're all right. And then trial and error with playing with the Alexa test thing to see if it worked or not. So it's much better now. So I have a talk here in just a little while about showing that stuff.
Now, yesterday's talk, that's the one I went to, was the one on doing Micronaut on Grails.
Yeah, that was a Grails
Google
talk.
Cloud platform,
that was using a lot of common functions that people would use when they're getting started using Google Cloud with Grails.
Right.
How do I do all that, and how do you deploy the app? So it's kind of based on the guide that we have with some extras on it, like how do I do pub sub and Bigtable and a couple of those other things. So
Expensive big table.
yeah,
apparently,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. Just a dev instance of big tables over $400 a month. So.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be doing that one. But.
I made sure to shut that off right after the talk.
Yeah, but that was you did that one, and then today you're doing the Micronaut with the Alexa skills.
Yeah, I'm doing that one in a little bit here. We're on our lunch break, and then Graeme has a talk on AOP with Micronaut.
Right.
And then I've got another one that's a kind of a 101 talk on using Ethereum, and really I kind of explain like how it works, and for someone that's new to it, how does blockchain work? What do I do with it?
Oh, Ethereum, the currency.
Yes, the blockchain, right? So I just kind of describe what all of that is and kind of introduce you to it and the concepts, and then we.
Yeah, Graeme was telling me that's what your bonus is going to be paid in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I hope the value goes up. Because it goes up and down a lot, so
good luck
it's a
with
bit
that,
of a roller coaster. But also talk about how do we interact with that with a Micronaut and Grail's application. So one example I show is how do I transfer money from one account to another inside of your app?
So
right?
From yours to Graeme's.
Yeah, and
I
we'll
get
set
it.
up hopefully the other way, but or I'm going to be very hungry. And then also one of the other common uses of it is not just about money, but it's about distributed apps that you can run on the blockchain. So the whole DApp concept. So I have an example of that too. And that's kind of like the power use, I think, for most people of using Ethereum is having these DApps being deployed and run out in this thing. But it does, like, if you want them to run on the public blockchain, you have to, like, it's an incentive-based system, right? So you basically have to pay people to run them for you as an incentive, or that's how the system works, right? People mine and run things because they're doing work. So that's something to keep in mind. So, but yeah, I thought it would just be a fun thing to do and to learn more about and share that with other people.
That would be fun. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. The whole idea of the contribution of these Bitcoin-related things is all the distributed trust or the trust system.
Yeah, verifying and make an assertion that, someone that if you kept things in a chain from all the way from example I hear a lot is a fisherman fishes a certain kind of fish out of a boat, and then as it goes through every processor all the way to the restaurant, you as a consumer can say, is this fake fish? Because this is a huge problem in the industry. Oh. Like if you order sea bass at a restaurant, there's like a 97% chance it's not that.
Really?
And a lot of other fish, it's the same way. So you could make a blockchain assertion that says, I could verify all the way back to the fishing boat that this was what they say it is.
I read a long read article about caviar counterfeiting.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah. Like, it's hard to even go out and buy seafood anymore because I just don't trust whatever they're selling me is even what it is. It's like more than 50% chance it's at any restaurant it's not what they say it is.
Well, it sounds like an interesting talk. I look forward to that.
Yeah.
So you're going to be serving sea bass at the talk?
No.
Because you don't trust
I could be giving them, catfish from, some sketchy place.
The Alexa one comes first, so you'll ask Alexa for the sea bass to be sent to you.
That's true. Yeah.
But just on the distributed blockchain, so that you could verify and pay for it with your Ethereum.
With my Ethereum income.
Yeah.
Right.
I know it's getting bad. We do. I know you've got to get ready for your talk. I want to make sure.
Yeah,
we got
to talk
in here too.
James up here because he's been doing a lot with Micronaut.
So
and
come on up.
All this stuff.
But we'll talk more later.
Yep.
And you also remembered your Micronaut shirt. Oh my goodness! So it's I have a Micronaut shirt. Jeff gave me one. If I'd thought it through, I would have worn it today. I probably would have worn my Grail shirt, but oh well.
I actually have a couple Grail shirts. I could probably give you one. We have some new ones.
Oh, new Grail shirts? Because mine says Grails 3, so
Yeah.
But James did. Okay, you did two things. You did, or that I'm aware of. You probably did more than that. So one was that you did the training class prior to the conference. How'd that go?
Yeah, that went really well. We had we marketed a training class with Micronaut, with IoT and GCP, and where we brought out some Raspberry Pis and we showed people how to deploy a Micronaut app to a Raspberry Pi and get that working to show how Micronaut uses such little memory and it could work just very fine on that platform. Cool. And we showed how to deploy up to Google Cloud and use some of those features within a Micronaut application. And we also just did a very sort of overall view on Micronaut, a little bit more than a shallow introduction of each feature, a little bit deeper to talk about all the different features that are people most commonly going to use.
Part of what I liked is you were just doing a talk on the HTTP client, and I remember saying to to the people at the booth. I'm like, how did he get a whole hour out of the HTTP client? And then I came down here and I'm like, wow, okay. Please say something about that. I mean,
yeah. So the reason why I gave the talk about the client itself is because I think it's one of the greatest features to show off what Micronaut is really all about. You know, if you look at all the things that our client can do, it shows that that we're all about making the developer experience easy, right? By putting that client on an interface and it.
I don't know if people are aware of that. You just write an interface. Correct. With an annotation on it, and it develops the entire implementation.
Yeah, and and there are other things out there.
Customize.
There are other things out there that do that, right? Mm-hmm. So that's a great developer experience. But what is different about Micronauts is that it's all handled at compile time, and we don't use any runtime proxies or reflection to actually generate the implementation of that client, right? So it's all handled at compile time, which means it's as performant as it could be. Right?
Wonderful.
And there's many aspects to it that are compelling, that make it. We say Micronaut is natively cloud native.
Okay. What does that
mean? If you haven't heard that before,
no, that's a new one to me.
Yeah. So you've heard the term cloud native,
sure,
before, right? But usually when you hear that, it's not really cloud native.
Right.
It's here's this thing, and we have all these other things that you can add on to it.
Right.
To make it cloud native, right? Whereas Micronaut is natively cloud native, which means you need to add nothing. It's there baked in. All the features that we've created are with cloud native in mind and work with it right out of the box.
So I noticed, there were some very practical things, like you could set headers. You could make it do asynchronous stuff with RxJava, with the reactive spec. Reactive stream spec. So either with RxJava or Reactor.
Pick your flavor, right?
Right. You could also, you had fallback mechanisms involved.
Right.
You had retries.
Circuit breaker.
Yeah. It was just extraordinary. It just went on of all the capabilities.
And service discovery is baked in. Client-side load balancing.
That's extraordinary. Yeah, the load balancing. Right, you're just watching the headers and seeing how it's flipping from one server to another.
I showed an example where one instance of the server returns. Both instances of the server return their URL as a header, and then I showed by executing curl that the header was different every time we executed it.
Just automatically doing a default round robin among the various servers, and I'm sure all of that's configurable.
Of course, yeah.
And the thing that I was struck by, of course, is that this is something you can use outside of a Micronaut app. You want some Micronaut capabilities, so you get the AOP part, right? The parent context and the ability to generate a class based on the interface.
Yeah, so you could use that at client in a Grails 4 app without having to do it's right there. You could just use it.
I'm looking forward to trying that in all kinds of places.
Because with Micronaut being the parent context, it's the same thing.
Right.
You're basically a Micronaut app at that point, right?
Right.
Because the context is there, so you just say at client and it works.
Now, did you do another talk, or was that the one?
So I just did one talk and then I did the training.
The training also. Okay. Yeah. So what are you working on these days on any of these things?
Yeah, so I recently just wrapped up an integration for Micronaut with RabbitMQ.
Right.
So you can say like at Rabbit Listener on a class, and then we'll listen for messages. Right. You can specify the queue that you want to listen to, and you can also just specify an interface for at Rabbit Client. Right, and you can publish messages without having to write that code yourself.
There was also a question in the audience about Kafka, or was it Kafka, or was it? It was Kafka.
Yeah.
And you said, just put it at Kafka. Whatever.
Yeah, at Kafka client, and you're off to the races.
Bang! It was no work at all in order to make that happen as well. And I believe you said most of this is in the documentation now.
Yeah. So recently in 1.0 of Micronaut, a lot of these things were all in the same code base, and our build times were getting a little bit out of hand. So we split a lot of these things off into their own repositories.
Sure.
So like Kafka, for example, RabbitMQ is in its own. A lot of the things are now in their own repositories, but so some of them have their own documentation, but it's all linked from the normal Micronaut documentation.
Okay, wonderful. So again, just more reason to dig into this stuff and to dig into Micronaut.
Yeah, because it applies to Grails developers as well now, right? Everything that you're hearing in Grails 4.
I'm interested in Grails 4, but I know there's a lot of people who are not that interested in a web framework. They're more thinking microservices and all these others, and that's more dedicated Micronaut anyway. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad that it's involved in Grails, and that'll help me. But I want to make sure people understand it's far beyond any of that.
We made sure that Groovy was a first-class citizen in Micronaut, and we've added additional Groovy support and for things in Micronaut that are not available in Java. For example, there's a Groovy route builder. That's a DSL style route builder.
Oh, really?
It's just a Groovy only feature at this point. Yeah.
It's a DSL language.
It's a
It makes
DSL,
sense.
right? Yeah.
Did you do the same thing in, dare I say, Kotlin?
We have not yet.
Not yet, but that's probably in the
it could
plan
be.
at some point.
It could be.
Yeah,
done.
because the reason I ask, of course, is because when you do reactive services with Spring, pardon me, with Spring, so they have Kotlin support and they have a DSL for their router and their functional endpoints and everything.
Yes.
I imagine it's just a natural transition to do the same sort of thing.
Yeah, you could do the same sort of thing. In addition, there's specific function support for Groovy. You can just have a Groovy script that's a function that you could deploy. You know.
I'm thinking of all kinds of possibilities now.
Yes,
that's going to be a lot of fun.
So we still love Groovy. We want to continue to encourage people to use Groovy, and so that's a major focus for us.
Cool. Well, I hope people find this interesting, and that we do have to give. Actually, Ryan looks like he's going to have time to prepare and everything. But is there anything else you wanted to mention, or?
No, I'd just like to say, just try out Grails 4. So we're in milestone right now, and there was a couple issues that kind of perhaps prevented people from really trying it out. But we're going to be publishing an M2 here in the very near future that resolves all those issues. So just give it a try and let us know if there's anything that we can make that transition easier.
Yeah, and I'm sorry we didn't get Zach Klein in here as well, because Zach's doing he did a talk yesterday on the single page apps with was it a Grails backend or a Micronaut backend? I don't remember, but it was single page apps and all that. And he's the front end guy on a lot of these things at OCI, right? I mean, he does the Vue and Vue.js and the.
Yeah, he handles a lot of those things. I'm
like
sort of the Angular guy, and he sort of handles the rest. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. So he talks to you. The two of you are you on the same team basically, or?
Yeah, I mean, we're both on.
It's all one.
It's all one big team. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How long have you been at OCI, by the way?
It's been over 3 years. I think coming on 4.
In the Groovy and Grails world, that's a long time. So very good.
Yeah, so I've been working on Grails ever since, actually even before I got hired. But
I have questions for you regarding Gorm, but that's a whole separate issue.
Oh yeah,
we can talk about that. So, well, great. Thank you very much for coming.
Yeah.
Good luck with your. Oh no, you're done today.
Thankfully,
so congratulations.
I'm over. It's over.
You could relax now.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah,
and
check out Grails and check out Micronaut. I think it's. I haven't met anybody that's said, "Oh, that's not too interesting."
Yeah. And for the people who are looking for Baruch, we don't care about Baruch anymore.
I saw him at the hotel actually.
He actually did a Java Puzzlers talk.
Oh.
He was in here for a few hours and then off to Japan. So he's
must be nice. Huh?
Way too important to hang out
course.
for our podcast. You know how.
Of course, yeah.
So, but this will be the diagnostic. I put it whenever he's not on the podcast. I at least mention something to see if he's listening.
Right.
So we put this toward the end of this one.
Yeah, we caught him at the hotel. I think it was yesterday or the day before, and he said, "Oh, you guys can do the podcast."
And he had that hat.
So
on
he had
here.
he had that hat on.
Yeah. So I mean, he was here long enough to pick up a speaker shirt. That figures, doesn't it?
Of course.
So. All right. So, at any rate, thank you very much. I appreciate your hanging out with us.
Thank you.
And good luck, and we'll see you in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks a lot.